Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this Christmas Day, 25th of December, for your version of Alaska weather toward the end of the month here. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. 1-800-472-0391 is the easiest way to do that on the phone, online. It's weather.gov/Alaska. And if you haven't tried recently, go on over with maybe your new smart device or your tablet or your phone and type in mobile.weather.gov. And then for your zip code, you can either enter in your zip code, which could work, but it might be a little bit better if you try your village or your city location, and you might get a little bit more of an accurate result. And then bookmark that, share that, or save that to your home screen, save it in your browser, whatever you have, and that will be a much more localized forecast for you that is better suited for your mobile device. And again, if you're in good data locations or on internet or Wi-Fi, that could work out really well for you. So be sure and try that. If it doesn't work or you need some more help figuring out how to use that, feel free to let me know. david.snider@noaa.gov. I'm here at least through the rest of the week, so I'll be happy to help you out as you're getting your new device set up and tweaked out for all of your weather needs. Let's take a look at what's going on around the state. No hazards, no warnings, no watches, nothing like that going on around Alaska. Nice, quiet afternoon and evening for many across Alaska. A little bit of light precipitation across southern parts of southeast. We understand that maybe around Klawock down toward Ketchikan, you might have had a little bit of a rain and snow mix, maybe just enough to call it briefly, maybe a white Christmas. So yeah, we hope. A little bit of light snow falling up around Norton Sound up toward the Seward Peninsula today. You can see a band of heavier cloud cover across the interior, stretching up to the Chukchi coast, wrapping through the Gulf. We've got a weak area of low pressure here around the Kenai Peninsula. It's also trying to start up some snow around the southern end. So if you're around Homer or perhaps heading up a little bit toward Nikiski, you might be looking at a little bit of snow cloud cover there just to your west. Probably not a whole lot of that falling on you this afternoon or this evening. Out to the west, we can see some colder weather. You can see the evidence of that with a cloud cover out here. Another boundary of low pressure stretching all the way up through the Bering Sea. So everything here is still in that deep and southerly flow. That has not stopped just yet. And really everything else is pretty dry and cold. High pressure sitting across the western Yukon right about here, just locking in a cold, deep layer of air across most of the eastern interior. Places like Fort Yukon, Fairbanks, all well below zero, Northway included. But we're also developing a stronger area of high pressure here across eastern Russia. That you'll see on the charts is around 1,050 millibars, so certainly something to note. As we look at today's map, this is the high that we'll be building to that length as we get into the next couple days. In the meantime, a lot of circulation centers here. The pattern is kind of changing up a little bit. We're developing some colder air, and that's where the high pressure centers are coming into play. Weak areas of low pressure are still sitting out across the Gulf and trying to move their way into the southern end of Cook Inlet. High pressure is in charge of most of southeast. We're going to develop a little bit more of a gradient here across southeast in the coming days. The high pressure is going to move a little bit further eastward, and that's going to start sweeping some of the clouds out of northern parts of southeast as we get into the next day or so. Look for stronger winds there to develop in the Lynn Canal as a result of that. We're not quite there yet. Out across the west, a 1,014 millibar low here across the Bering Sea. This is keeping a front intact for the moment and channeling some clouds into the region, a few areas of snow showers there. A better opportunity for some light snows falling around the west coast, all the way from the Kotzebue Sound region, Kotzebue itself to just east of Shishmaref. A little bit of fog in the region as well, all the way down toward the YK Delta. Really nothing terribly substantial, but you might have had some snow today around Lake Iliamna as a result of that. As we go into tonight, we want to plan for that front out in the west to gradually fall apart. Snow showers will continue along that boundary, but becoming fewer and further between. Across the interior, watch for some bands of light snow, and that'll mainly be north and west of the Alaska Range into the upper Kuskokwim and the middle Yukon valleys, the Kobuk and Noatak, and into the upper Koyukuk there. For the Alcan border, high pressure setting up there. That's about 1,040 millibars, and really that's going to keep that region around the upper Yukon and even the upper Tanana just downright cold. So plan on some colder weather to start seeping in and stabilizing in that region for the next several days. Trough of low pressure here across southeast. Don't be shocked to run into some areas of light rain across the north and eastern Gulf, mainly along the outer coast as we go through tonight. And there's a band of low pressure working from east to west across the central and western Gulf. This is kind of sweeping another surge of rain and snow showers close to Kodiak. It looks like a lot of this is going to miss. It might just kind of graze AKwx and then kind of curve its way back to the west, maybe reaching the south coastline of the Alaska Peninsula. Sand Point might be kind of close to that. I might see a few passing snow showers as a result, but this overall wave here across the Bering really wants to hold together. So as we get into Tuesday, you'll notice this band kind of creeps a little bit further eastward, starting to graze the coastline. We got warmer air starting to enter the picture here right on the bottom of the map. And then we've got our trough of low pressure here across southeast. This is the part that's going to start drawing in some of that colder air off of the continent. And as this starts sweeping down, you'll notice the clouds start to vanish across some parts of the Lynn Canal into Stevens Passage. So watch for the winds to start coming up as this pattern kind of sticks with us for the next couple days. High pressure up across the North Slope at 1,041 millibars. That will be cold for the north and the eastern interior, but it's also going to keep kind of an unsettled area of low pressure and maybe some light snow across the interior. Nothing really substantial, but just kind of an ongoing area of poor visibility and very small flakes, I would suspect. This is not going to be a vigorous snowstorm, but enough to limit visibility if you're flying around for the interior for the next few days. There's our low pressure trough here across the Bering Sea and our high pressure system out across eastern Asia that's trying as hard as it can to get a little bit more established. Out across the North Pacific, a 1,000 millibar low just south of the chain. This is slowly working its way eastward and northward, but it's probably a little bit more north and westward than eastward toward Alaska at this point. That's got some warmer air with it and a lot of moisture, but the overall pattern is kind of limiting how far east this is going to travel for right now. So as we go into Wednesday, you can see low pressure across the Gulf, and this is still working northward. This is the system that was just barely on the screen a minute ago. This is lifting northward. This will gradually bring some more clouds closer to southeast. High pressure is still sitting here across the western parts of British Columbia and the Yukon, and the pressure gradient is still here across southeast, so we're still going to get that offshore wind, but it looks like it'll keep skies clear for you. Across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern chain, that band that was kind of slowly creeping its way westward is now also creeping its way northward. And you start to get into a little bit of more rain and snow chances there by midweek. Also a little band of some light snow for the Chukchi Coast and the Kotzebue Sound region. Low pressure, it's funny, typing this in, 1,034 millibars is low pressure. It's all relative, right? And we've got a high pressure system that's over 1,040 millibars, so if there's something lower in its circulation center, it is going to be a little bit lower than that. There's our 1050 high out across the eastern parts of Russia. I believe that is might be the first time I've typed in the aviation red alert numbers there for the high pressure system this far this winter. Maybe not, but it's been kind of few and far between, hasn't it? But you can see the effects that this high pressure system is carving out across the Bering. A lot of cloud cover, offshore flow, but certainly some deep cold. And maybe, just maybe, we'll start growing some ice up around the Chukchi Sea where we've kind of carved a lot out thanks to a southerly flow, because this should have a stabilizing force on the sea, so smaller seas, certainly colder temperatures, and the sea surface temperatures are already ready to go. So hopefully that will improve the ice conditions there for our friends around the Bering Strait and north and west into the Chukchi Sea. Let's look at the weather pattern as we get into the week. Let's take a look at your temperatures in the morning. Teens and 20s for most in southeast, and looking for similar conditions around south central to Kodiak Island. Prince William Sound in the teens and 20s as well. Gold Canada is going to be cold, 16 below. 2 below in Eagle, Northway about 30 below, 23 below in Fort Yukon, 19 below for Arctic Village, and below 5, about 5 below to 5 above for the Arctic coast. Kotzebue Sound temps in the 20s. Overnight lows in Norton Sound back in the mid-20s as well. Savunga, you're looking at 24. St. Paul, about 35. The Alaska Peninsula, upper 20s to mid-30s. Dutch Harbor and Unalaska, about 34. St. Paul, 35 with a high. Really not changing much tomorrow, it looks like. 35 degrees for you. Middle Tanana Valley, close to 0. 2 for Eagle, 15 below in Fort Yukon. You can see up around Ambler and Bettles, temps in the single digits to high teens. 20 around Barrow, Kaktovik 16. South Central back in the 20s to mid-30s as you get around Homer and Seward, 35 in Kodiak. 20s to low 30s for many in southeast tomorrow. That'll be high 20s, though, for places like Juneau. The Alaska Peninsula, you're looking at temps closing in on 40 degrees, in fact. Dutch Harbor, about 36. Adak and Atka, about 35. Overnight lows Wednesday morning. Cold again, low teens for many, and high temperatures by Wednesday, approaching 0 around Fairbanks. As you look at southeast, 20s and 30s for you.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Time for your flying weather, and IFR conditions will continue across the YK Delta into the upper Koyukuk valleys and the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, with IFR conditions very close to the upper Susitna and parts of the Copper River Basin MVFR for Cook Inlet, many areas around the Kenai Peninsula, and we'll also see a return to MVFR across parts of southeast. It won't last too long, though. Maybe into the afternoon you'll start to see some clearing as we get through the day. IFR conditions, though, start to move into more parts of the interior, all the way to the upper Tanana and the south-facing slopes of the western Brooks Range into the upper Kotzebue Sound region, the Kobuk and Noatak areas, the YK Delta, Unalakleet, Nome, all the way down toward Ammonik and Nunivak Island, Utolan Strait, looking at IFR conditions. Watch for patchy areas of MVFR through the Bering, but keep your eye on what happens across the interior. Not a whole lot of change as we go into Wednesday morning. IFR conditions will linger there. MVFR for most of the coastal plain, IFR for the Seward Peninsula, parts of the YK Delta, especially the Yukon Delta. As we get into Bristol Bay, a little better chance of some morning VFR from Dillingham to King Salmon, Cape Newenham, all the way up toward Lake Iliamna and South Central, and southeast still holding VFR through Wednesday morning. As we get into the afternoon, IFR conditions linger around the Brooks Range, north and south, and across the interior of the Seward Peninsula and the higher terrain there, all the way into the Kobuk and Noatak valleys in the upper Koyukuk, and also around the upper Yukon Valley. South Central still holding at VFR, southwest patchy around Bristol Bay all the way up toward places like Bethel, and then once you get upstream of Bethel toward McGrath, you're probably looking at MVFR. Southeast, mainly VFR conditions, but MVFR becomes a little more widespread for the Bering and most of the Aleutian and Alaska Peninsula communities by midweek. Let's take a look at your pass conditions as we go ahead for those particular spots. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass, we expect to see VFR to start, but I'll lean over toward IFR conditions as we go through your Tuesday. For Lake Clark and Rail Pass, expecting IFR conditions there to slightly improve as we go into Tuesday afternoon, but again, not a whole lot, and you'll be back in it again, it looks like, by Wednesday morning. Rainy Pass expected to be marginal. Windy Pass expected to start out around IFR conditions and maybe some improvement for you, and Isabel Pass if you're flying in that direction for Tuesday. Mentasta Pass, we expect change to IFR conditions as we go through the afternoon. Tanita Pass, also expecting to see IFR to start, some improvement to be had throughout the day. Portage Pass, marginal conditions improving a little bit. And Chilkoot and White Pass, as we saw on the maps, looking pretty good so far. Freezing levels show that all the warm air, and especially that warm bubble that we had up north across the coastal plain and the northern interior, a lot of that has moved well offshore. There's still just a little remnant of it sneaking up around the Beaufort Seacoast, but probably not enough for most folks to notice. Across the Gulf, you can see the levels there at 2,000 to 4,000 feet. All of that out of our range, the surface freezing line over southeast, Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula, just north of St. Paul and south of St. Matthew. Icing potential then is improving somewhat. There is still some moisture out there, levels ranging around 4,000 to 5,000 feet across the interior, and we're sitting around isolated moderate threats for the Beaufort Seacoast, out around areas west of the Bering Strait, west of St. Matthew, northwest of St. Paul, around AKwx, and then down toward probably Dutch Harbor and Unalaska to above 7,000 feet and beyond. Southeast, south central, most of southwest is generally in the clear for any major or main icing threats at this point. The jet stream shows a large bubble of cold air and a deep trough moving into the lower 48 states and Canada. You can see that northerly flow here on the eastern side of high pressure that has pushed its way into the Beaufort Seacoast. That's drawing in a southerly flow across most of Alaska and keeping warm conditions across the Bering Strait. However, a trough is trying to continue here across the western Gulf. That's drawing in northerly winds out across the central Bering Sea. Those northerlies going at 60 to 100 knots, feeding into the Pacific Northwest at 85. And another trough is back across eastern Asia, anywhere from 75 to 150 knots on the south and eastern side of that part of the jet stream. So at 9,000 feet, we're a little bit more under the control of a ridge of high pressure at this point. We've got gentle easterlies moving across south central a offshore flow for most of the west coast of Alaska. Northerlies well to our east, and again, a ridge of high pressure over the Gulf of Alaska. Southerlies across the western chain. You can see they're a little stronger at 3,000 feet there. Easterlies are a little stronger across Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula. Northerlies about 10 to 15 knots across the central and eastern interior, and more of an onshore westerly flow, in fact, for the Kotzebue Sound region and the northwest, 20 to 40 knots there, all under high pressure. What about turbulence? Mainly in the afternoon for northern parts of southeast, thanks to the pressure gradient, and in the morning, way out west, below 4,000 feet, watch for some considerable moderate. A look at your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
Hello, my name is Don Lee, Chief Pilot of Talkeetna Air Service. Today we're going to go over some special ski operations up in the mountains, up in the base of Mount McKinley. We landed on the southeast fork of the Hoeppner Glacier. We'll be going over some points on your skis, maintenance, things to watch for in these winter conditions. Our skis really take a beating and we use them a lot, and these are things that we've just learned through the years, some special tips that might, I hope, to help you folks watch for and to prevent any problems in the future. First, generally, I go around and I check anything outside, anything that looks different, anything loose hanging down or any cables. Later, we'll come back and do a more specific check on your skis. But on my initial pre-flight, I usually just walk by, give everything just a good shake, look for any wrinkles in the skin. Nobody's backed their car up into it or something overnight or anything else like that. Looking at the base of your landing gear, there's no wrinkles here, there's no loose hydraulic lines hanging down or no red stains on the ground or anything. Just a general check, everything looks straight all the way to your leading edge. No frost or ice chunks on the very leading edge or anything like that. Look for clean, smooth surfaces. Know if your fuel vent's open. Counterbalances are in, the hinges all have their pins, the push rod is there and loose. We'll come all the way to the flaps. And we're just checking the flaps for free, easy movement. Push rod is in good shape. Now I'll just go over some of the finer points on checking your ski rigging out. The skis, because of the snow conditions and hard runways and the abuse they take, sometimes they're neglected, and it's real important to check your rigging real close. And if your rigging is old or you don't know how long it's been since it's been replaced or the bolts, it's a good idea just to throw out the old and put new stuff on. It's a good safety factor that we do every 100 hours on our aircraft. Okay, you looked at your rigging is tight, that of course for any obvious missing bolts or anything like that, that your cable's in good shape, that it's not frayed. In this particular model, the cable works in this housing here. Your hydraulic lines are tight. There's no red stains on the snow or on the ground. Everything's tied up tight. You look, especially, there's 4 bolts in here on the Cessna model that's particular, that you want to be sure that there are no cracks that you can see from the outside, that there's no that the bolts are all on and that they're tight. And by wiggling the ski in the airplane, you can see that. There is a certain amount of play that has to be there. This arm has, whenever the airplane is in the snow, you have a tremendous leverage with the tail. And if you get 1 or 2 people pushing on it, you can oftentimes twist the ski because of the tremendous leverage moment on that. And you want to make sure your arm is in good shape, that it's not bent and that it's not cracked anywhere. Underneath, look, make sure that your plexiglass isn't wore away, that there's no jagged holes in it or spots, that your skegs are still in good shape, there's nothing obstructing the bottom, that your main rigging, that your spring still has some spring left in it, Your cables are all hooked up. Then again, no frayed cables, or all the bolts are all tight and solid. This cable here also, that no frizzies. It's connected well. There's no sign of fatigue or anything like that. Okay, when you fill your airplane, especially in the winter, with nylon snowsuits and wool mixed, you have a high possibility of static electricity. And it's important to be sure, and if you don't have a physical ground wire to actually ground your aircraft, come and touch a metal point to block and ground any static electricity. One little thing to live by is know exactly what you got in the tanks. Not to just say your gauges. Man, oh man, you'll have a surprise someday. Okay, we're all set. Oil's okay, gas is sumped, hydraulic reservoir is full. Now that your pre-flight's complete, it's a good idea to go and get a weather briefing from your local flight service station. In this country, it's real important. How's it going, Dick?
Pretty good, Don. How you doing this morning?
Yeah, good. Heading up to the hill today, Southeast Fort. What do you got for weather up in that area?
Well, basically, we've got a pretty well entrenched high-pressure system over Siberia. It's keeping the lows pretty well south of us along the chain in the peninsula. We're probably in the fringe area up here of some middle and high clouds, 12,000 scattered with high thin cirrus. Lower clouds and possibly some light precipitation in the southern Susitna Valley, but I don't expect any up in the northern valley or along the range today.
Okay. All right, real good. Thanks, Dick, and we'll file a flight plan.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And time for a quick check of your sea ice edge. With high pressure building across eastern Asia, don't be surprised to see some new growth in the Chukchi Sea, where we still have open water north of the Bering Strait. The good news is, too, that with colder air filtering down, it will be possible to see some new growth north of St. Lawrence Island and into Norton Sound, where a lot of the ice that you're seeing right now came from the northern coast of the YK Delta. Has been pushed up toward Norton Sound, and the ice that you're seeing working along the western end of the Seward Peninsula came out of Norton Sound there. So a lot of ice is still on the move with that southerly flow. So plan for more changes, but it does look like there will be a chance for some colder and more ice-producing type weather coming up here toward the end of the week. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice is the place to go for your very latest ice information and analysis, as well as forecasts to take you out through the rest of the week. This, of course, updated this afternoon, and check that out anytime. Take a look at the forecast for southeast. Light winds along the outer coast. However, on the inside passages, a little bit of a different story, with building high pressure across the interior and a trough developing out across the parts of the outer coast. Expect the air to be drawn in and down the mountains. That's going to clear up the sky a little bit around some of the northern Lynn Canal and make it pretty blustery, it looks like. 35 knots with a 7-foot sea. Light winds a little bit closer to Clarence Strait. 5 knots with a 2-foot sea. The outer coast, you're looking at about 7-foot seas and winds from 10 to about 15 knots. Wednesday, a little bit more of an offshore flow developing. You can see the pattern here. Stronger winds developing, moving through Haines and Skagway, and then turning offshore. That easterly flow up to 20 knots with 6 to 7-foot seas there, and about 6-foot seas around the Lynn Canal. 3-foot seas as you head through Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, looking at about 15-knot winds where it is not quite so windy. Across South Central, a general northwesterly flow across the northern Gulf, 15 to 20 knots. Some stronger gusts outside of the Hitchinbrook entrance and near the Copper River Basin. 10 to 15 knots down Cook Inlet, 20 knots to even 25 around the Barrens. A 5 to 6-foot sea is expected there on Tuesday. As we get into your Wednesday, the winds come in from a little bit more of a northeasterly direction, looking for easterly winds across the northern Gulf. 2-foot seas on the inside of Prince William Sound, not too bad there. 6-foot seas south of Calgon Island, and northeasterlies again in the northern Gulf, producing about 8-foot seas. As we get into Bristol Bay, look for a 15-knot wind, 20 knots down the Bering Sea coast with 5-foot seas there, 11 to 12-foot seas across the Pacific coastal waters. Inside of Shelikof Strait, a 10-knot wind with a 2-foot sea, 25 knots. So on Wednesday, up to 7-foot seas then. Northeasterly strengthened even more down the Pacific coast, 25 to 30 with 14 to 18-foot seas, and 5 to 7-foot seas down the Bering Sea coast, 20 knots inside of Bristol Bay from the north and east. on your Wednesday. For your Tuesday, out west in the chain, southeasterlies there from Kiska to Attu, looking at 20-foot seas, looking for 10 to 15 knot winds in most of the central and eastern chain. 25 knots along the Pacific coast south of Unalaska and Nikolsky with an 8-foot sea. As we get into Wednesday, those north and easterly winds stay with us up to 25 knots in most areas. 10 to 17-foot seas expected. 6 to 9-foot seas across the central chain and the Bering Sea coast. And the easterly strengthen out west. You see the seas coming up too. Yellows and the oranges tell us those are seas anywhere from about 20 to 25 feet in general. So plan on some changes as we get into Wednesday and Thursday out across the chain. For the west coast, 10 to 20 knot winds in most locations there. Northeasterly flow outside of the Kuskokwim Delta will give us 4-foot seas. Southeasterlies inside the Pribilovs, 20 knots with a 7-foot sea there. Northeasterlies over the ice inside of Norton Sound, becoming a little bit more from the north as we get into Wednesday. And a general offshore flow from Hooper Bay to Makoriak to Quinnipiac. 5 to 6-foot seas there, and 6-foot seas west and south of Nunivak Island and St. Matthew Island with that 20-knot wind. Across the north, you're looking at a westerly flow now for the Beaufort Seacoast. That's a little bit of a reversal. 15 to 20-knot winds, south and southwesterlies for the Chukchi Sea. Remember, open water here, so 5-foot seas and periods of heavy freezing spray may be possible in those regions. Look for a light northwesterly flow for the Beaufort on Wednesday, 10 to 15. And northerlies, this is what you want to see for colder weather, more ice-growing weather, but the values of those winds are still up there, so we need this to settle down a little bit, and it will with building high pressure slowly and surely as we get toward the end of the weekend next weekend. Look for northerlies through the Bering Strait, about 15 to 20 with 4 to 5-foot seas on your Wednesday. Recapping tonight's weather, no warnings, watches, or advisories for any part of Alaska, so good, quiet news. Breeze will be setting up for southeast, helping to keep it cool, clear, but breezy as we go into the next couple days. Some light snow possible across the interior. Look for small flakes and small accumulations, if any, as high pressure is setting up. It may limit visibility across some parts of the interior the next couple days. So make sure you check on your visibilities and your turbulence before you fly out. Most of the turbulence issues will be across the west and the northern parts of southeast as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. Some snow showers through the Bering Strait, otherwise a quiet Wednesday on tap. Merry Christmas. See you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.